Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. We're I guess we're making a rom-com road trip this time.
Are
And
we?
and from the back seat, I am Jesse Jackson. Joining me is Karen.
Hello, everyone. I guess I'm in the passenger seat because I don't
Yes.
drive.
All right. White and Lou.
Hi, everyone. I think there was just too many voices.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we've got Ivanova and Marcus take a road trip. Sheridan is offered an interesting partner, and Jakar, no one will listen to him in Voices of Authority, originally aired January 29th, 1996. And I think this is an interesting one, so I am looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Lou, kick us off.
Interesting is a interesting word because I really hated part of this episode, and I don't like to use the word hate lightly, but some of these parts of this episode really turned me off. Yet there were certain segments of it that I found eerily prescient because of what's going on in the world today, especially in your country. And that part of the episode really disturbed me, but in a beneficial way, I think, in a responsible, mature way. But some of the other stuff was like, where the hell is this stuff coming from? And then talk about your Deus Ex Machina, space war jump tubes. There was some stuff here that just like, how the heck are you better have an explanation for this further down the road, because why this certain thing was plucked out of everything that has gone on so far in the series is a little incomprehensible to me. So I have mixed feelings. If you didn't get
that is great. That should be a fun conversation. And Karen, how about you?
I liked it. I do agree with Lou on a couple of points where the tech was head scratching, but we had so many good parts to this episode that I kind of hand waved at. We have Draal back, we had a little peek into what the machine does, which is cool. And Marcus was back. It was a win-win for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I like this episode. There is one specific plot point that does pay off, like in season 4. When we come up to that, if I am silent, you will know why. And because I've seen it, I knew why. It was like, oh, okay, this doesn't bother me as much. But I do think there's a lot of interesting things. So I don't know when to throw this in, but I think so now is a good time as anyway. I've gotten the habit of pulling the JMS books where he published all the scripts, and he does a little introduction to each episode. And in this one, he specifically talked about Jeff Conway. And he said that Jeff Conway had some issues in the past, but when he came to read for a very small part that had 2 lines, the question was asked, what's going on? And very quickly, I love science fiction. I love this show. I just want to be a part of it. I want this on my credit list that I was in Babylon 5. And they thought he was good. And the cast liked him. And as we talked about last time, the political heat discussions at lunch would get pretty heated. And he was always a voice of moderation, was really fun. So they just really
enjoyed. Kicked him for the behind the scenes stuff, and we ended up.
And then really just decided that he had such an every man quality that having him in this Night Watch storyline is interesting. The other tidbit I thought was interesting is the head of costumes came to JMS and said, "Are you unhappy with me?" "No, everything's good." "Okay." And she seemed really timid. And it was only like a day or two later, he went, "Oh, the Zach thing about the jacket. And he went there and said, no, this was just for the character. Everything is fine. I was just messing with him. No, you were fine. But she was honestly concerned that he did not have the courage, did not want to hurt her feelings by telling it directly. So he put it in the script. So
Nice.
just a few things of that.
So that's Anne Bruce, is that?
He did not.
I'm looking at IMDb.
Yeah. So I love that little story. All right.
Okay, let me just say one thing about the costume. It looks very much like the costume that Picard complains about, where he has to pull it down all the time. So I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah. So let's start with Delenn gets everyone together, and Zach is a little confused about what this code is, which is a seed of we go into later in the episode. But they're having a council meeting of one of the super council meetings, right? I guess the war council. And Delenn's saying, we're going to need reinforcements. And the only reinforcements that will really count are the other first ones, old ones. And Draal shows up and they have all this story about that. And we go, let's just take this all at one time if it's okay with you. I want to discuss specifically later why Sheridan couldn't go on this thing. I think it was just an excuse to get Susan and Marcus together. But they go, they find a first one, and Susan does an incredibly great job of do not throw me in the briar patch. For those of you who remember those old fables, and gets a first one on board with the war. So, Karen, I see you nodding. Why don't we start with that whole storyline? Take it, and Lou, don't wait for her to finish. Let's just do a roundtable. Let's discuss it, okay?
Sure. Are we including the Zach part in this as well? Or are we going to talk about that separately?
Yeah, we'll talk Zach and the political leader separately, I think.
Okay. The only question I had was, what position does he have that he thinks he should be privy to that?
I think because I get the feeling he's Garibaldi's second.
Okay.
And he's, hey, Chief.
Yeah, I got the feeling, especially since Garibaldi said, I've been burned, because that was his second in command that almost killed him.
I get the feeling, if not officially, then unofficially, he's Garibaldi's work husband, right? That thing where you have just someone where you're in. Yeah, that's what I got out of it. I don't know if officially.
That position should be privy to whatever's going on. Is that what he's?
Yeah, in his mind of, hey, the only way I can have your back, the only way I can have the station's back if I know what's going on, and you're keeping secrets.
Okay.
And I think that they set up the riff of Garibaldi doesn't trust Zach because he's part of Night Watch. And Zach is, hey, they're paying me extra money. They're our bosses. And, oh, by the way, you're keeping secrets too. So, in fact, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, all right.
At the very least, I can't have your back if you don't let me in. Pretty much, what I was hoping to hear, that there was some underlying, because otherwise I would say, what do you care?
Yeah.
Is it your business to know about that?
Yeah. This is none of your beeswax, what I'm doing.
Right. So that was the part that really confused me about that.
Yeah. And Karen, Lou, do you want to jump in on this is Zach kind of right to be asking for this, or do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think your read on it is the way I took it, Jesse, that he's his right-hand man. And especially in their line of work, it's important to know as much as possible about everything. And why would Garibaldi keep this from him is a reasonable question for Zach. And I have to say that the War Council in general is doing a terrible job of keeping their presence a secret, because not only does Zach know, Jakar's on Delenn's ass about it as well. So I was a little, it's one of my pet peeves with this episode is how sloppy the War Council is being. And I don't know if this is all going to come to a head at some point, but Jakar and Zach know about it. If they know about it, who else knows about it? How long before Earth finds out about it? Because Zach inadvertently told Julie Masante about R7 or 7R or whatever it was. So it just seems very sloppy, and it doesn't seem characteristic of any of the principal characters of the War Council that they would be so sloppy. So I really had a problem with that whole aspect of the episode.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Karen, I want you to jump in, but I just want to throw in before I forget that when Sheridan sets this up, he says miscommunication. People not knowing everything about each other is what leads to losing wars. So that's the very reason he's setting this up. And so I guess the question is how they aren't doing a very good job of keeping this silent. And also, how big of a bubble do they heat because of Andrea? That they were going to give it to her, and then she ended up having this thing. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah. I'm just wondering where the leak is, for one thing. Is it just conjecture at this point? Is it the fact that Zach goes off and grumbles to somebody about it? Or is it because someone overhears Garibaldi in the hallway talking about it? I want to know why it's widespread, although it's not super widespread, obviously, but there's murmurings about it. And like, how do they know the word Rangers? Is that going around because the Rangers are walking around the station? There's lots of things to dissect about that. I'm hoping that doesn't come to bite them in the ass, although it does make for a point that we made, I don't know whether it's last week or the week before, that we want Jakar to be in on it. Is this a good opening for Jakar to get pulled in because he already knows a bit about it? And that now he's given the book of Jaquan to Garibaldi. That's great. I love that they're pulling him in because, number one, I'd like to see that actor get a little more screen time. And number two, because I think he might be valuable to the War Council. At the very least, he's an outsider and he might be able to offer more insight and also to get information about what's happening.
Just tangential question to that scene that you just referenced, Karen. But when Garibaldi's door chime rang, who did you think was at the door?
I don't know.
I thought it was going to be his supposedly dead ex, but
oh, did you?
yeah, that's what
I thought
I
it was going to be a
happening.
done kind of moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wasn't suspecting that. I just thought maybe it's Sheridan coming to give him bad news or something. But since he did have a conversation with Jakar about it and Jakar was getting more into it, it's not a huge leap.
No, it wasn't, but
yeah,
I was expecting something different than how it played out. That's all.
That's cool to know that you were.
What are they going to do here? Because
you were dissecting it a little
who's
more.
Who's coming to the door at
this
this time of night?
Yeah, I love
that.
I love that he was super grumpy about it too. He almost didn't answer it, which isn't that kind of a no-no for the security officer to not answer the door?
Yeah.
So what I took it as, if it was actually something vital, the chances are it would have come through official communications. They would have, no one's going to show up at my door and knock off at 2 a.m. If it was emergency, they would have called myself. But I think in his mind, he goes, crap, what if there is something else going on? So I have to, but yes.
Yeah.
By the way,
like,
while we're here, I love that scene, and we'll spend a whole time talking about Jakar, but I love that scene. Read this. I don't speak Narn. Learn it.
Yeah.
Right? We'll talk later.
There's actually a lot of that, isn't there? You could learn Minbari, or I could come on the ship with you, and you could learn Narn, period. Yeah. And I want to know if that goes anywhere. Is he going to pull someone in that understands Narn? Or is he just
I think there's going to be lots of references to the old ones and then the shadows in that thing.
Book of Jakar?
Yeah. We know there's stuff about the shadows, the shadow people in there. Yeah, I think the pictures are going to help him get intrigued, and then he's going to find a way to read it. So maybe he goes to Lanier, because we've seen that Lanier does a lot of stuff like that. Whether he knows Narn or not, I don't know. But yeah, there's lots of really big things that seem really small.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? He drops off the book and he tells them to read it, but I think that has bigger connotations. And I think maybe the thing with Zach and Garibaldi seems like a little funny plot point, and I think that's gonna lead somewhere, because we know that Zach has already shown that he is loyal to the Night Watch now. even though he's had reservations about
Okay.
it.
Question, because this whole night watch thing has bugged me from the beginning, and I've made my misgivings about this dual job thing that Zach's doing. With this particular episode, why does Garibaldi not tell anybody who's on security that they cannot be part of the night watch because of the conflicting issues that are going on there? So this is one of the things that's really bugging me about this whole night watch thing. And in this episode, it really irritated me to see this character, this Julie Masanti character, come in and lay down all these new edicts to the security force of Babylon 5, which is supposed to be an independent policing force. And now they're saddled with these political edicts. So I don't understand why Garibaldi, from a character perspective, would not be upset and try to stop this whole thing from happening. Am I out in left field on this?
No, why wouldn't he put his foot down, at least at this point?
Yeah.
And say, look, we need them out of our hair. But I get the feeling that he can't do that anymore. It's gotten too big. I don't know, they have more influence now because of their position in society, that he can't just say, you can't be in the night watch anymore. And because the backlash would come. But yeah, I don't know if that's true or not.
So I get the feeling, and this is just me, is that since Night Watch is an official organization that's part of the Earth Force, and the same, in other words, and this is a bad example, I'm not allowed to tell you you can't join the union. And Night Force isn't a union, but it is a authorized part of the military force, because Babylon 5 security force works for the EarthGov. They don't work for Babylon 5 individually. So that's the reason why. Now, I agree with you. They're trying to serve two masters, and they are totally different. They have different agendas. But I think the idea was you aren't allowed to tell them, no, you can't be part of this organization, because and so I get how that's really unclear, but in my mind, that's how you're not allowed to tell them that. And that's why Garibaldi didn't sign up for it, and he's not supportive of it, but he officially can't tell them. It's like when a new employee starts, I often want to say, all right, these 3 or 4 employees are the wrong people to go to coffee with. Nothing good happens in the smoking area. Don't go to the smoking area. There is nothing but discontent and complaints.
Hopefully nobody from your work is listening to this right now.
And I say this all the time. I say that very much. And I have leaders that smoke, and I'm like, I'm just telling you, nothing good ever happens in the smoking area, because you've got leaders and non-leaders and different departments all smoking together, and everyone thinks it's off the record, and nothing's off the record. So that's my thought is. Does that help a little, Lou?
I've got one phrase that is quite resonant nowadays, and it's called politicizing a Justice Department or a police force. And this is what we're seeing happening right now. And we're seeing that it's the issues of why you don't want to do that. So this is why I'm still struggling with why Garibaldi and Sheridan are not saying, look, the security force has to remain separated and what's the word I'm looking for? And partisan.
Yeah, they can't have a political agenda.
They can't have a political agenda. They have to be removed from any sort of social aspects. They're there to enforce the rule of the law, rule of law. I don't know what I'm saying.
I think it's rule of law, but now you've got me confused.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, they're supposed to be dispassionate, and they're not anymore. They're compromised. And knowing how Garibaldi rails against establishment, I'm just really puzzled as to why he and Sheridan are not saying, look, you're compromising our security forces, but they're not going to be able to do their job effectively if we keep this up. I guess you could argue that they're also busy with their R7 or 7R that they're letting some of their other duties slide. But I would be really curious to hear, and maybe this whole issue will be resolved properly further into the series, But I'd really like to get into JMS's head around why he's letting these dynamics play out the way they are right now, because to me, they're going against the established traits of the characters. So I'm really struggling, and maybe I have a misperception of how these characters should behave in this situation. But right now, I'm not happy.
Head scratching. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that justifies it a little in my head is how much the EarthGov would push to have the security forces, at least some of them, in their Night Watch program, because that's the viewpoint they want. They want law enforcement to buy into their agenda. And so they would push really hard to get some of the security forces into the Night Watch. And it makes me wonder, is that the reason why they have to allow it? But again, if we're reading into something that happens behind the scenes, then they're not doing their job explaining it to us. So I would like to think that the Night Watch is pushing, EarthGov is pushing, and they just don't have enough power to push back. But again, they're not explaining that to us. So that's just in my head.
So I'm going to share something that I pulled from the script because I knew this would come up.
Okay.
And so this is directly JMS. And I don't know if it answers your questions, but it's pertinent to our discussion. In the years since this episode was produced, it's been interesting to see how the many elements positioned in the Night Watch have found their way into the post 9/11 zeitgeist. The politicization, the politicalization of the military, the emphasis on blaming the news media for sowing non-patriotic ideas, the criminalization of the disposed, the dismissal of our notions of privacy, the need to curb dissent, the modifications of language in pursuit of public policy in order to redefine problems out of existence, a more casual attitude about the means by which one may gather evidence, and the equation of disagreement with sedition, curbing essential freedoms in the name of democracy, but just until the crisis is over. I guess it just goes to demonstrate that there's always been a place for yesterday's fashions in today's modern world. And for those who've asked, the artwork used for the Night Watch posters seen in this ad and other third season episodes was based on similar posts used during the Cold War by the Soviet Union to inspire the workers to operate within the boundaries of what the Russia seemed appropriate for behavior.
Yeah, those Stalin posters that we know so well, it very much look like those.
What I found fascinating is he's talking about post 9/11, and we are now talking post Trump presidency. Yes, and January 6th. Yes,
it started with post 9/11.
Yes,
with the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
So and it's just evolved. I feel like they gave themselves too much leeway with the Patriot Act. And that's one of the things that really interests me about that, is that I feel like maybe they're not seeing it as that much of a threat. It's irritating to them, but are they seeing it as the government giving themselves too much power? That kind of makes me wonder. Does Garibaldi see it as something more than just irritating and we shouldn't be doing it, but whatever?
And you could make the argument that they're already in their mind doing a two-front war. We have to worry about the shadows coming. We have the unrest at Earth, and we find out, which I'm sure is one of the things Lou wants to talk about, finding out that we now have proof that Vice President Clark ordered and the basically assassination, but they don't know, because you hear Morton's voice on that discussion, that they are about to have that what they think is a minor is going to be a war, that there is,
or at least part of the war.
Yeah, that there is going to be, Earth is soon going to be, I think that's not spoiler to say, Earth has the potential to be their enemy.
Right.
Yeah.
Or EarthGov.
Yes, EarthGov.
Right. Yeah. And again, they don't even know that the Psych Corps is part of that, because we've seen Morden meeting with EarthGov and a representative of the Psych Corps together in a room. But
Yeah.
the people on Babylon 5 aren't privy to that yet.
Yeah, we
So
know
do
for
they
sure.
know that it's
Yeah.
going to get pulled in? Do they realize that's Morden's voice?
No.
So,
And
yeah.
So you have Morden that we know is working with at least part of the Earth government. We know with the current president has a deal with him, and Psych Corps has a deal with him, plus the Centauri. There are Mordens and Shadows, tentacles, fingers are everywhere.
Yeah, and I think once they figure that out, Sheridan knows that he's aligned with the Shadows because he saw them materialize in that cell with him.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they can tie it together rather quickly once they figure that out.
Yeah. The biggest struggle I'm having with this episode is it feels like it's a blender of so many different things going on at the same time, and none of them are really resolved satisfactorily or explained satisfactorily. So that's my general dissatisfaction with this episode. Karen, you just mentioned and I think it's a good point that you could argue that the War Council is not really twigging on to Earth because of they're running these dual things. They're not twigging on the fact that a lot of people seem to be finding out about them because they're busy with all the things that they currently have on their plate. But I'm hoping that in the subsequent episodes very shortly that they're all going to compare notes and they're going to say, hey, Jakar's asking about the War Council or Rangers, and Zach's asking about R7 and blah, 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 and this and that. Guys, we got a bit of a problem here. People are finding out who we are because that was not even addressed in this episode at all. And I'm hoping that's going to be a follow-up, because right now it's like one of the dangling threads that's needs to be addressed. If they're going to continue oblivious to this, then I'm not going to be happy.
Right.
No, I think that's a fair concern at this point, right? There's a lot of stuff not going on, and we're all over the place, which I'm loving. But like the scene where the political
dinner scene.
appointment, the dinner scene where she double speaks.
It's so eerie that in today's world what we're living through, and there's this extra little bit of thing that really freaks me out about, because the actor who's playing this government representative, she has a very passing resemblance to a current political person in the Republican Party whose initials is an abbreviation for the word meeting. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. So when I was watching this actor playing this role, I was going through such weird feelings, because on the one hand, I'm going, boy, she really looks like her. She's driving me crazy. And then sometimes I was going, her acting is terrible. And then I said, but man, what she's saying is so eerily relevant to today that it's really freaking me out. Like that whole scene, like at first I thought, is she delusional? What's she talking about? Sheridan's looking at her like, from what planet are you from? Because it's not Earth, or at least the Earth I left. And I was going, did I miss something that went on in the series? Like, she's made up this whole other alternate reality. And I'm going, this is just like what's going on today. And you've got half the country believing one thing and the other half believing something else about the election results. And I'm like, that scene was just, it just blew me away how relevant it was and how unsettling it was. So yeah, it really freaked me out.
It is, I agree. It is crazy to think that this was written so many years ago.
Yeah.
And how remarkable it is. And I will be even more generic, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but she looks like she could be pulled from the Fox News set. There is a whole set of Fox News anchors.
Can you tell them apart? No.
Yeah, they are.
To be fair, she could be pulled from any news.
But in particular, if you look at the female representation on Fox News, it's all the same. They're all blonde, pretty.
Well, there's a couple of black.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
as a rule, they are. There's always going to be exceptions, but they all look like her.
She reminded me of Kellyanne Conway more than the person you mentioned. And on a side note, God, she used those chopsticks. I can't use chopsticks well, but I love her nonchalant. Oh, the noodles are great. And no, we don't have a homeless problem.
Yeah.
You redefine the problem. And
Yeah.
I worked for a company before, not my current company. And so where the culture was blaming someone else, blaming the problem to someone else was just as good as fixing the problem. If there is a problem, let's say sales aren't high enough or the product had a lot of glitches, if you could blame it in the big meeting on someone else was just as good as fixing it. Versus, I don't, and our leader never said, I don't give a flip whose fault it is. I want to know how are we going to fix it. And it was all about let's find who made the mistake. And so her redefining it was great.
Especially the mentally ill.
Yes.
That's a huge problem even now.
Yeah.
The gun problem isn't about guns. It's about the mentally ill.
Yeah.
The homeless problem isn't about
Eerie.
the mentally ill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do something about it.
We don't have a homeless problem. There's plenty of jobs out there.
They just don't want them. They're lazy. They're ill.
And at the same time you say that, your governor will cut funding for military and
Yep.
And I do want to, if you're listening and you're going, damn it, why are they back on politics? You can't discuss this episode without discussing politics.
Especially when it's so eerily the same. It's freaking me out.
And it's literally about politics. That woman is a representative of politics.
Yeah.
The same old tired arguments get recycled time and time again. It's always lazy people, mentally ill people, blah 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 blah. And if you don't like a situation, just redefine it in a way that it fits your perceived notion of the universe and ignore reality.
And then don't do anything about it.
Yeah. So it was an unreal. That dinner scene was one of the most uncomfortable Twilight Zone, Outer Limit kind of scenes that I've seen in a long time. I was just like, wow, this is just unbelievable what's going on in this scene. And I was, for a while, I was totally lost. Is she totally serious about what she's saying here? And my expression was just like Sheridan's. He's like looking at her, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, it's like when you feel like a stranger in a strange land, to quote another science fiction.
And I remember back in my days when I was a kid growing up at the Baptist church, right? Satan never looks ugly. Satan looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And to have her cast, the actress is very attractive. And
very Shattuck.
And I thought her performance was good. I heard you mention you were not sure of the acting. I thought she played it really well.
I thought she did at times, and at other times I thought it was like, cringy. But
but is it cringy because of what she's doing? I think she's telegraphing the fact that she's shady.
Yeah.
Or as you say today, sus.
Opportunistic. She's opportunistic.
Yeah, she is.
And I do have to say, on a side note, my brother taught me how to use chopsticks when I was younger, and I did get pretty good at it. I used to eat my salad in one of those hibachi places with chopsticks.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore because I don't have the strength in my fingers anymore. But I was very, very good at chopstick usage, and I was impressed by her.
Since we're talking about chopstick skills, mine are decent.
Oh, that's good.
Mine are horrible. So now that I want to take the challenge.
There you go. Great. Learn how to do it. The hardest thing in particular is rice. Yeah. Even if it's sticky rice.
But you notice they shovel.
Yeah.
Right? If you watch the
absolutely.
Yeah, they might grab it a little bit.
They're cheating. But that's the way they do it.
And that's just an us conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But so the main thing about that scene for me was it honestly sounded like what people say today. One of the things that really stymies me is racism is solved now. How can you even say that with a straight face? I think in her head, she knows what she's saying is not true, but she has to put forth this rhetoric and try to get it out there. They can't be dumb enough to buy into it. And I think this about people today. Do they know what they're saying is wrong or evil, right? They know it. But they have to or at least in
I
their
think
mind they
sometimes
have
they
to.
do, and I think sometimes they honestly believe what they're saying. I don't think it's clear cut.
Yeah. So I was wondering in my mind, does she buy into this, or is she just a mouthpiece? And I feel like that might not be an important part of the storyline, but to me, it was definitely something to think about. Does the EarthGov know that they're spouting nonsense? And I will never get in the head of someone like that. I don't know how to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because it's wrote to me. There's racism. How can you not see that?
It'll be interesting if she ever comes back on the show. I don't know, but I'd be very curious to see how she's received the second time if she does come back.
Or is she just put back on her ship and shunned?
If war breaks out, I don't think she'd be inclined to stay on Babylon 5.
No. I assume she wouldn't be safe there.
And I assume that she's similar. You get the feeling, and of course you can look at IMDb and everything, but I think the Narn person that was trying to be the leader and they chose Jakar instead, they go off to other pursuits. The other person, oh dang it, I had the name and I lost it. The really bad, which book of Harry Potter where
Voldemort?
The lady who becomes the headmaster, that Umbridge, right?
Dorothy?
Yeah.
Something Umbridge, yeah.
Yeah, where she's from the ministry and just is evil without pretending to be evil. Just she believes that. And this is where she just no, Zach, we have to do the right thing. Obviously, and I posted this on my social media as we're recording this, the indictments for former President Trump have come out about him not keeping secured top secret classified documents, having them, and then once being pushed about it, denying it and going, and you can go read the indictments. But I said, if you are not a fan of Donald Trump, nothing said or done or evidence will convince you that he's not guilty as hell and should go to jail. And if you are a fan of Donald Trump, no amount of evidence or discussion will convince you that this isn't politically motivated.
Nope.
Unfortunately, we are both sides stuck in our I don't care about the facts. I know what I believe. And
I do. I mean, I feel like our side cares about the facts.
Yes, I do, but I get that.
Their side,
to be fair, and so
they see the facts, but they twist them into something else.
Or they just totally ignore them altogether.
Yeah. And just for those Harry Potter fans out there, please don't get on my back. It's Dolores, not Dorothy.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's go to
something. I always found it funny that the way her name sounds, it's spelled differently. It means like to take offense.
Umbridge. Yeah, very funny. That's got to be deliberate. All right, let's do something a little bit funny. We can go back to this, but I loved the scene with when they find the first one and they get unhappy when they mention the Vorlons, and Marcus says, "Oh, it's like they owe him money," and Susan doing a wonderful job of manipulating them. And you would think, being the first ones, if they're truly that wise, they would see what she was doing. But sometimes I think anyone gets your emotions. I thought it was a wonderfully needed comedy break in the episode, which shows how clever Susan can be. What are your thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, he's shaking his head.
I'm all for showing characters in a positive light. However, I want that positive to light to be based on something that makes sense and you can hang your hat on and say, yeah, that was a real good moment. But my problem with that scene is the first ones are built up to be these highly evolved super race of beings and you're going to trick them with a playground taunt? Seriously? I'm supposed to buy that? I thought that was incredibly weak. Am I the only one? I get your point about it being funny and so forth, and it makes Susan look good, but from a mythology point of view, I thought it was just lame as hell. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a cranky mood this week, but Yeah, that was, to me, that was the low point of the episode, was the not the Susan's acting or her execution of the scene, but just the story logic of these powerful evolved race of beings being like children. Like, it was just ridiculous. I just didn't buy that whole conceit at all.
Yeah, it's reverse
Karen?
psychology
Okay.
at its best slash worst in this case. I agree that it doesn't seem terribly plausible. But one of the things it reminded me of is I just watched the documentary Still, which is based on Michael J. Fox's books.
Yep.
And one of the things in Back to the Future was he could not resist if someone said he couldn't do anything, if they dared him, or if they said he couldn't do anything. And he's smart, but it got something going in him to say, you can't do this. And he was like, what? Let me prove you wrong. But in this case, the first one should be so evolved past this, right?
Yeah.
They should not care. If they don't want to get involved in this war, they won't get involved in the war. So yeah, I agree. It's implausible. But I also agree it was a cute scene for Susan to.
It was, definitely it was, but it's based on
a flawed premise.
Like,
right.
I can't get out of my own head. You know, like, I'm thinking first race, I'm thinking like the Organians from the original Star Trek, that they would be evolved beyond these kind of petty, at least to me, they would be. If they've been around that long, they must have learned to deal with differences, and they wouldn't care about that kind of stuff. Like, to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And obviously, again,
I feel like
people will read that differently, but I just can't get my head around an evolved race of beings being that childish. Like, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm reading more into it, that bringing the Vorlons in changed their mind, and it wasn't all about the reverse psychology thing. They hear the Vorlons are involved and they feel, but again, that's me reading into it, and I shouldn't have to read into it.
Yeah. And the other issue I had with that whole storyline is, again, I'm all for fleshing out the main cast and that, but Draal's the machine expert. Like, why isn't he looking, and he's got all the knowledge, why isn't he looking for the first ones? He's at an elevated level of evolution, so he would be the perfect emissary to go to talk to all these different first ones, not instead of sending like us flawed human beings that really supposedly comprehend these.
Could he go that far?
Beings. As far physically, or
he can't go far physically, but whatever his projection is.
It sounds like he can go wherever he wants, was what I understood.
He can see wherever he wants. I just don't know if he can project.
Yeah, and he's a Minbari too, so he's from the religious caste. He's got that communications ability. I just saw it again from a mythos, Babylon 5 universe perspective. Boy, listeners are really going to hate me this podcast. I just thought Draal was a perfect candidate for doing that, as opposed to sending out to either Sheridan or Susan. The saving grace of that whole storyline for me is that it intimated that whatever was going on with her, I think it has something to do with her telepathy, her latent telepathic ability, because she saw things that Draal didn't think she would be able to see. And again, why Draal doesn't know she's got telepathic abilities, I don't understand, because she's plugged into the machine. He would obviously, however he's communicating with the machine, he would realize that she's got telepathic abilities, but maybe that'll come out in another episode as well. But that was intriguing. And then that also leads into what she saw. And there was some weird graphics it looked like a bunch of eyes and that. I didn't really understand who they were or what they were representing. And then, as Jesse alluded to earlier, the whole assassination communication thing, how did she pick that up? That had to be either the weakest Deus Ex Machina I've seen in a while, or there was somebody else was guiding that whole thing so that she intercepted or picked up on that whole storyline. So whether there's something somehow Kosh, or maybe there's some hidden overriding program in the machine that is guiding her to that particular bit of intel, whether that's because it was the first ones who built that machine, or maybe it's the first ones are still in some capacity still part of the machine, like their collective consciousness is part of that machine, then they're monitoring situations. But I think we've been told that the planet doesn't really play that big a part in the mythos of the show. Yeah, so that's the intriguing part of the storyline for me, is that somehow it's tied into Susan's latent telepathic abilities, but I hope to see that there's an explanation as to why she received that bit of intel further down in the series.
So those eyes that she saw,
yeah,
those are the shadow people. I'm assuming because they have eyes like that in rows.
They do?
They do, yeah. Like their face is big like this, and then there's 3 rows of eyes.
When did you see that?
On their face. When they materialized in the hallway.
But we only saw them from the back, right?
In the
hallway. Seen their front.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen them. Yeah.
Okay.
They killed that one, remember? And he was facing them.
Okay.
That's one of the things I remember, is they had like rows of eyes. So I
you're-
assumed that's what she saw.
Yeah, you're both on, Karen. It's exactly what it is.
Okay.
I have the same concerns. This is very much a hand wave to me. First off, why does she have to be in the machine?
And I like how she just sticks her hands in the there's
Yeah,
nothing
she's not really
there's not
hooked up
really
to it.
anything connecting to her. She's just putting them out of view, and you're assuming that the machine somehow is molding with her. So
and
that was
why,
kind of funny too.
I guess it's funny to have him like, oh, I totally forgot that I lose track of my body. But why wouldn't he go searching?
Yeah.
Because he's more powerful with the machine.
Yep.
And how this isn't a time machine. So how did, and maybe a listener can give their theory on why they were able to pick up this past transmission.
An echo of it? Or...
Yeah, it's a very convenient way to get this data in there, and the idea that we now have proof, which leads us to our modern debate. There's no way that the president would have done this. I don't care if I see it with my own eyes. The vice president would never do that. You see it with your own eyes. I don't care.
It must have been manipulated.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah. So did they stick like a flash drive in to download that? Because how did they get it?
Right.
Those crystal things? Is that?
And why was the transmission garbled? Like, why would it?
Why was it all staticky?
Yeah. If she's experiencing this, why is that the way the original transmission was? I don't know, but I just thought that was also convenient to make it not
so many hand waves.
Yeah. So I have to take these things at face value, and I'm just hoping that JMS will pay these off down the road, because I just don't like stuff happening out of thin air without any previous build-up or plausibility. And this seems just so damn convenient for such a major storyline that this is how you're going to resolve it. It just, I find that kind of storytelling irritating. So
we have to also remember that these shows, especially older ones, weren't made for people who watch it like we do. They were made as like entertainment. You watch it once, you don't worry about it. You get the gist of what's going on. The people like us who dissect it, we're always going to see the flaws in an episode. So I tend to give things a little leeway, but still the plot holes get me.
Yeah.
They really do take me out, even on the first watch. If there's a plot hole in the first watching for me, that to me it bothers me.
I don't know
overall,
I don't know if
the story's
it's a plot.
Good.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a plot hole right now or just a story to be continued in a future episode. If it stays the way it is, that's going to be damn convenient. And yeah, the show's from the 90s, but in the 90s, TV shows were doing serialized storytelling fairly well. And with science fiction shows and fantasy shows in particular, that you have to build up a lot more, you have to do a lot more world building in that. So you have to be consistent with what you're doing. You can't have a show where you say, if you blink your left eye, you can teleport. And then in the next episode, so somebody blinking with their right eye and teleporting. If you established in the previous episode that no, it's only with the left eye that you can teleport. So when they pull stuff like this in this particular show, it's just disconcerting to me, because I'm placing a lot of my enjoyment comes from the fact that you set up rules and now you have to work your way around them in inventive ways that are still consistent with the universe that you've set out with. But when you just do these kind of out of the blue, non-explained solutions, to me, that just undermines a lot of tension. It's the same kind of problem that the MCU is running into with their movies, is with all these multiverses and that, you can kill off a character in one universe and then they'll just come back from another universe. And it robs the story of all the tension in that if you don't have limits and stick to them.
Except for Black Widow. Right? She's died.
Yeah.
And that's it. But there are some things that we have to think might be important, that Susan is a telepath, a latent telepath.
Yep.
So there are things like that. She went in the machine and she saw this stuff, but instead of it being a hand wave, it's the fact that she has this telepathic ability.
And
but
so it wasn't
Go ahead.
wasn't explicitly said that, though. And I don't even think it was implied pretty strong.
No,
So,
that's just us reading into it.
Yeah,
Well,
reading into
he
it.
said,
Yeah.
I thought it was implied because Draal said that you shouldn't be able to do that. And I said,
Yeah.
what reason would she be able to do that? And the only thing that comes to mind
Because
is
she has
telepathic abilities. So
Right.
what else could it
which
be?
is very mild. We
Yes.
want to stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
isn't she like distilled because her father wasn't a telepath and her mother
Yeah, she
was?
yeah, didn't they say she's not even a P1?
Okay, and one thing I have to say, I'm
Please.
sorry,
Oh,
about
no.
them going out on the ship. There is definitely some vibes happening between Marcus and Susan. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, no.
For sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a lantern on it, because
for sure.
she's irritated by him. He just doing that. No, I have absolutely nothing to do.
Yeah.
Oh, do I need your permission? There is just so much fun banter.
And it's one of my I think it's my favorite trope is enemies to lovers.
Yeah.
And this it's heading in that direction. And I love it so much.
I had to laugh though. Like the previous time we were on the White Star, there was like a dozen
Minbari,
and this time there's like 2.
8.
Yeah.
Maybe 8. Yeah. Yeah, it was full. There was like 2 Minbari at every station. And now they're just wandering around in the background.
There's just 2 of them. Yeah, that's the problem with setting something up like that.
Exactly.
But I do love them together. I agree with you. I think it's nice. Though I don't know if I told this story before. I was at Dragon Con, and Claudia Christian was there with Jason, right? Yeah. And he kept interrupting her. And she finally said, basically, and this is my words, not her, but basically, you pull this crap all the time. Every time we're on stage together, I'm tired of it. If you want to be the center of attention, fine. And she stood up and she walked off stage.
Oh boy. Did she mean it?
Yes. This does not look to me that it was shtick. It did not look like she was this was playful banter, and later she came back. This truly looked like, Jason Carter, you are a pain in the ass. I don't like being on stage with you. You always do this to me. I'm tired of it. Goodbye. And she walked off. And then so Jason,
it's the same in real life then.
Yeah. And he later, he just finished the session. And I'm a big Claudia Christian fan, because one of those where you're at a convention, you sometimes get off the unplanned moments. It was at Houston convention. The hotel was connected to the convention center. And as I was walking to the convention center, Claudia Christian was walking, and her arms were full. And I said, "Can I help you?" And she goes, "Yeah." So I grabbed part of her stuff and we walked and talked all the way to her table. She talked about this book she was writing set in Roman times, and we just
Cool.
visited. It was a really good moment. So of course I'm Team Claudia.
Mhm.
So
I would probably be Team Jason, although I
yes.
really like Claudia Christian.
Yeah.
But
So
hello, I'd have
yeah.
to align myself with him. He's
So
still
how weird is it when you're with somebody like that you've seen on TV? Did they look smaller than you think in real life, or did she like? How did she strike you differently than when you've seen her on TV?
I want to be careful, but it may be just I have that kind of face. But we were talking, was it a good show? And we were visiting, and she brought up the fact that they had not told her what the rates were going to be. And so therefore she
At
was
the
charging
convention?
less. Yes,
Oh,
she
okay.
was charging less than what other people were charging because
for
she thought that
signatures and
was
stuff.
that was the rate they were going to charge. And she says, and the issue is it dilutes your brand. And I don't like it. It was a business discussion more than a fan discussion of how you work this and how do you do this, everything. So I thought that was, yeah, she was very pretty in person. She did not seem smaller. Like when I met Julie Benson from Angel and Dexter, she's incredibly small. I was
Mm,
like, boy, you are tiny. But no, she just was very interesting. Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on
Okay.
the spot.
No, that's great. No. Yeah. Yeah.
So have we covered
All right.
everything off now, or
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think we
we are.
have.
I
Yeah.
think we've discussed
Mhm.
everything. Anything we've forgotten? I'm
Yes.
looking at my note. Okay. Yes.
Yes, the naked scene
Yes.
between
Oh,
Sheridan
yeah.
and Julie Musante.
Yes.
A terrible blending of a Star Trek line too.
Yes.
Yes.
I have to say that
Go where
was
everyone has gone before.
Yeah.
so cheesy.
Is it cold in here? I also was
Okay,
a
the
great
nipple
line.
joke was funny.
Yeah.
It was very funny that he turns around and we know it's because she has nipples out, right?
Yeah.
That he makes that gag.
Yeah.
But it flew. If you only watched this once and you weren't paying attention, it would fly under the radar. But
Yeah.
it was pretty funny that Claudia Christian downplays it
Oh, okay. Sorry. And
where
like,
everyone has
about-
gone before. That means that what they have Star Trek in that universe.
Or no, that's just they're just having
Homage.
a knowingly a little.
Yeah, but where everyone has gone before, isn't that a Star Trek?
Oh
Well,
yeah,
point?
boldly go. Yes, it is. But
Right.
I think that's just her saying you're about to go. This is not virgin territory, so to
Right.
speak.
Literally.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was funny. I think that was also politically motivated. If you want to
Yes.
take more of a look, she's trying to get him more on board.
Yep.
With
Yes.
it. She knows that he might be a little resistant from their dinner, that he's already questioned her on some things, and maybe that's her way of drawing him in. But I think it's funny that she was trying to get her some.
And I think it's a tool in her toolkit. I think
Well, not a hardship, to be honest,
with
right?
Bruce Boxer, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, the other behind the scenes story JMS said is that they filmed this on a Friday, and Friday was also barbecue ribs day at the dining hall, and he chose ribs versus looking at the naked lady. If you're under 40, you pick naked lady. Over 40, you pick ribs, was the joke he
Right.
made. And he said that the other thing that people are very careful when you're filming usually the actor is not normally nude.
Right.
They
I'm
have it
assuming she had
draped.
like bathing
Yeah.
suit on. or
And
something.
he said the material that was to cover kept falling off. And she finally just said, blanket, let's just go. And she did it without the covering. And they
Wow.
said that Jeff Conway also enjoyed because his role was to watch her very closely this whole episode. And he found that very fun. Yeah.
As he
That's
would,
good.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I noticed that maybe she was also coming on to Zach a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
But yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think so
letting
too.
it known that she'd be up for it.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't
So,
that kind of a British thing? Yeah, she's up for
yeah.
it.
Aha! Any final thoughts? We have gone long.
I'm sorry.
No, it's been a good episode to discuss.
Yes.
No, I
Anything
think-
else?
I
Okay.
think that's pretty good.
All right, let's give ratings. Karen.
If you take all the plot holes out of it, I think it's a decent episode, but those inconsistencies and plot holes drag it down a little bit. I'm hoping I'm not going super low. but I'm going to go 6.5 naked ladies.
Okay, very nice. Lou, this
I'm
is
right.
one of the lowest ratings
I
you've given.
know.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's because of all the hand wave
Sure.
stuff.
No, I get you.
I'm right there with you, Karen. I give this 6.5 dangling threads.
Dangling participle. But
Yep.
yeah.
So because I totally agree with you guys' assessments, because I know some of the things that happen in this story have major repercussions to the arc down the road.
Reproduction.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Yes. No, this will, I mean, there are significant things that happen that lead to, in a lot of ways, this is a bridge episode of I needed to get
Feels
this
like-
out of there. Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Got all these
because of that,
things. They got to get out the door.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
Lou and I recognize that too, but I understand you're going to rate it a little higher because you know what's coming.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying I think you guys are giving the right rating for what it is. Hey, okay, I see you've given me puzzle pieces, but the puzzle pieces don't make it like a really well-written episode gives you a complete picture and sets up for things for the future. This
Right.
one, you have 3 or 4 very key puzzle pieces, but they didn't deliver them in a way that worked for you guys. Yeah, and I think that I'm going to give it 7.5 chopsticks, and
Not that
looking
much higher.
forward.
No,
Yeah, no,
you're still a little lower
yeah,
than normal.
I think, yeah. If I, so, here's what: if I was ranking the car segment, I would give that an 8 because
Yeah.
it's so well done. Each of the conversations he has with each person is a little different, right?
Yeah.
If I rank the political doublespeak with all of her scenes together, I would give that probably an 8 as well because I think it's very well written and done. But the Susan stuff, while knowing that we have proof that the vice president was involved, but as far as a storytelling, that's maybe a 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, as a standalone, if this was a Saturday Night Live skit, her with the
Sure.
first ones, I'm giving that a 9 because that's just great. So that's why I'm saying all mumbled together. This is
Yeah,
good.
but it's not Saturday Night Live.
No, it's not.
So, yeah.
We got 3 emails, but I am worried since we are this long. Do we want to read them all? Because we are long. You guys tell me.
I can edit a little bit as I read.
I think pick the best one, maybe, and
Okay.
just edit the other 2 or something.
Yeah. That
Okay.
sounds good.
I'm gonna be I gotta say before we get feedback for this
Yeah.
episode next week, that should be interesting because of the discussion that we had. I don't know how well this episode is received by the fandom in general, but yeah, I'm curious to see what the feedback is going to be on this one next time.
Yeah, and how the diehard fans, which are a lot of our audience,
Yeah.
I want to see how they feel about it. I think that's super interesting. I understand if you like it more, obviously, because you know what's coming down the pike. But for Lou and me, I feel like we're like, okay, where does this tie in? What does it mean? Why is it not complete? So.
Yeah, and also one of those things where you just have to, yes, you both acknowledge that. You guys even could see, I think this is definitely story building post, and going back, it might change, but that doesn't matter. Our gig that we've chosen, our challenge is to rate them one at a time. And you have to look at it, does this work as an episode? Yeah.
Exactly right. And it might work better once we've watched more episodes. But right now, got to give it our 6.5.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
So you want to do Texas a la shock?
Yep.
First?
I'll read Texas's first.
Okay.
Welcome to Garibaldi's Fashion Express, where we can handle everything to make you look fantastic. Don't settle for looking like a circus tent. Let us tailor your uniform into something stylish women will find irresistible. Okay, I totally forgot about that line that clowns would be coming out of his butt. That's pretty funny, by the way.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So, unless, of course, she's feeling prickly because her attempt to seduce the captain failed miserably. And it doesn't sound like she's just disappointed on a professional level from her reaction when he kissed her. It seems like she was actually getting into it, and then he bailed. Of course, she has no way of knowing that was just to keep her from seeing Ivanova appear right behind her, which begs the question, clearly the machine can tell where Sheridan is. Couldn't it also see he wasn't alone? Maybe JMS just decided it was worth the gag. The searching scene is interesting for a couple of reasons. Based on what Draal said, Ivanova's latent talent seems to have some unexpected effects. He's been working on this machine for over a year now and has seemingly gone unnoticed, but Susan barely plugs herself in and the shadows are on her almost immediately. And then she sees Clark's agreement with Morden, identifiable by his voice. To me, this is like Pippin looking into the Palantir and glimpsing some of Sauron's plan. That's cool.
A nice Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, pulling in the Lord of the Rings reference. With Sheridan still fending off Miss Musante, she and Marcus head out to look for first ones, and they find one. These are the ones Jakar said must walk there alone, and we see why Catherine Sakai's ship was disabled as it passed by. The thing drains power if you get too close. There's a couple of takeaways here. First, the Vorlons aren't on friendly terms with the other first ones. Second, despite their age, power, and level of advancement, they can still be influenced by petty taunting. Looks like the first ones aren't so above it after all. Anyway, the cat's out of the bag now. We'll just have to see how the chips fall. Until then, this is the Texas Shock signing off in Valen's name. So good email. It's nice to hear that we're on the right track with things. And I always love when Texas kind of clues us in that we're on the right path. It's very cool.
Absolutely. I'll read Nathan's really quick. Nathan Litteroy. Sorry, Nathan. Destroying your last name. Hi, guys. Love this episode. It's so hectic and silly and scary at the same time. Julie Masasante always caused a mix of feelings. On one hand, she's terrifying because of what she represents and everything she says about higher-ups knowing better and us small people better to shut up. On the other hand, I admire her attitude, going for the throat and being a wonderful, hateful asshole. Really want to see more of her while I scream, "Stay, Queen!"
Slay, Queen.
Yes. I've also liked to see how Sheridan tried to get out of having sex with Masasante after he kissed her. When I was a teen, it was an overload of awkwardness, but now I want all of it, baby. It would have been terrible and hilarious. Ivanova is always one of my favorites in the episode. She often plays a straight man in comedic situations to great effect, but I thought Claudia acting against nothing in a great machine was very effective too. But the discovery made at the end of the journey never set right to me. It's too sudden and too convenient. This is another first draft problem for my taste. It needed revision where Susan seeing at least glimpses of other moments from her past or the path erroneously taking her to people she had strong feelings about. Zog became a part of my inner voice for some time. It's as good of an answer as one Kosh gave to Sinclair when we asked if he meant Narn or Centauri, and Vorlern answered with regards, Nathan.
Yeah.
Zog, yes.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Do you want me to read David?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so hi, David. We know that David is a commenter, a frequent commenter on the YouTubes. So thank you for sending us an email. Obviously, this is an early season episode. JMS is still setting up the pieces. Julie Musante, in her own way, a scary individual. She can project the air of a quote-unquote true believer 1 minute, and when she decides that's not working, give the impression that she knows that she is pushing BS, but is doing it to protect Sheridan. Obviously, Clark is having concerns about Sheridan after the Centauri cruiser incident. They essentially sent her to spy on Sheridan and to use any means necessary to keep him under their control. For example, had he slept with her, there would have been several ways to use it against him. 2 things I haven't figured out. If the captain needs something, he almost always goes to number 1 on the priority list. But here they present it as, we'll get to it when we get to it. What the hell? Sheridan should have known better that to invite her back to his quarters. I know this was written before the Clinton-Lewinsky affair, but that was definitely a no-go even then. Didn't they have any place in public they could have gone? We did get a couple of killer lines from Ivanova, though. Ivanova gets a good part of this episode, and she shines. From being plugged into the great machine, we see that she has some strength we haven't seen yet. From breaking away from the shadows to discovering Clark's involvement with Santiago's assassination to dealing with Marcus and the first ones, she's definitely showing her potential. Side note, did you all pick up on who Clark was talking with? Yep, we sure did. The line about rewriting the dictionary really hits harder in light of the information that has come out of the last couple of weeks about current events. Yeah, even the last couple of weeks, right? Next week ought to be interesting. All I'll say is it is a pivotal episode for one of the characters, and it's a favorite guest star, and a favorite guest star appears. See you then. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks, guys. All right. It has been a long discussion, and we appreciate it. I hope we enjoyed it. Karen, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I am at Alvaria on the various social medias, and my blog is allystuff.com.
And Lou, what do you got coming up on your Writers Podcast YouTube channel?
Posted a couple of interviews for this month. I don't know what's on the schedule yet for July for July. Is that July or June? I can't remember now.
July's
It
coming
is
up
June.
next.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
July is
but
next month.
I might have just posted my May interviews,
Okay.
but I don't have anything on the schedule for that. However, there's, of course, Lou's Reviews YouTube, where we do these B5 podcasts, as well as our Stephen King podcasts and our JKL Media podcasts. You can find me on Twitter at LW and I think that's it.
Yeah, I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Set Listing Bruce is continuing to put out episodes where I'm discussing people who are fans of not only Bruce Springsteen, but other musicians. I'm really proud of my interview with Warren Zanes, all about his new book about Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. Please check out that interview and check out that book. All right, we will be back next week. But for the meantime, be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
And see.